brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, students and scholars, teachers and trainers, professors and professionals, listeners and learners, those who are listening, watching. It is really nice time, nice place, nice section. Today you are watching 3M Theatre. Dear friends, our present President Modi ji, respected ministers and doctors, honorable advocates, advisors, administrators and advisors, you are listening Science to Spirituality, Language to Literature. कल हमने डिस्कस किया किसी भी नई भाषा को सीखने के लिए साउंड एंड लाइट इसकी शुरुआत मानी जाती है। ऐसा कम्युनिकेशन जो बर्ड्स में होता है, प्लांट्स में होता है, ट्रीज में होता है, एनिमल्स में होता है, साउंड एंड लाइट बेस्ड। और इनिशियली जब बच्चा जन्म लेता है तब भी साउंड एंड लाइट के द्वारा ही वो कम्युनिकेट करता है। धीरे धीरे जैसे जैसे माइंड का डेवलपमेंट होता है तो वह स्क्रिप्ट समझता है, साउंड के लेटर्स को और उसके वर्ड्स के पिक्चराइजेशन को माइंड में स्टोर करने लगता है, इमिटेट करने लगता है। सो द टेक्नोलॉजी that we are adopting today in this modern time, downloading, recording, saving, imitating, these are applicable for the students, not for the youngsters. Unique methodology of learning is imitation. Imitation is the best educational technology that makes our youngsters creative, generative and operative. What's the relationship between literature and society? We all know that literature mirrors the society. Literature is the mirror of our society. If we know the complete understanding of language, then we can know the literature of the worldly people. From the different cultures, we can understand their dresses, their food, their way of living. We all know that literature mirrors the society. What happens in a society is reflected in literary works in one form or another. The literal meaning of literature is the art of written work in different forms such as poetry, plays, stories, prose, fiction, etc. It may also consist of text based on information as well as imagination. A society is a group of people related to each other. It is also a group of like-minded people largely governed by their own norms and values. Human society, it is observed, is characterized by the patterns of relationship between individuals who share cultures, traditions, beliefs and values, etc. If one looks at the history of society, one will find that the nature of different societies has gone through changes from the Paleolithic period to the present age of information technology. The people's living style, faiths, beliefs, cultures, etc. never remain uniformly consistent. With the passage of time owing to change taking place in environment and with emergence of new technologies, we observe that the societies have not remained stubborn with regards to their norms and values, the reflections of which can be found in different forms of literature. Kalidas, a great poet ever born in Indian history, is first afraid of the uncertain attitude of the people, but then pleads his own points of views that provide us union of the old and the new. In Malvika Mittam, his first play, the poet shows his humility and becomes uncertain whether people would accept his play. Therefore, in the beginning of the play, he pleads, every old poem is not good because it is old, nor is every new poem to be blamed after it is new. Sound critics, after critical examination, choose one or the other. The blockade must have his judgment guided by the knowledge of his neighbors. Different societies have used and are still using different languages for the fulfillment of individuals and societies' aspirations. Sometimes it is noticed that many changes are labeled against literature as well as society. Literary writing is banned because an opposite section of society finds its mirroring beliefs and norms against that society. The examples of Salman Rushdie's The Satanic Verses and Taslima Nasrina's Leja provide testimony to such charges. The influence of literature on society is felt directly or indirectly. Thus, Miss Stowell's Uncle Tom's Cabin was directly responsible for a movement against slavery in literature and life in USA of those years. The novels of Dickens had an indirect influence in creating in society a feeling for regulating and removing social wrongs, calling for necessary reforms. Sarath Chandra's novels have gone a long way in breaking conservatism as regards women in our society. It is, however, clear that if we are interested in literature and its influence is bound to move us amply, literature is made out of the lore of life. No doubt the realistic artist brings to a pause the oddities and crusader aspects of life more much. But to know life fully, not only the bright side, but also the seamy and dark side of life is to be known. Thus, society creates literature. It may be described as the mirror of the society, but the quality and nature of mind, whether he is progressive in his outlook or reaction. Example of relationship between the two. The Rape of the Lock is a poem which shows the greater bonding between the literature and society. In this poem, Alexander Pope shows himself emphatically pictures the artificial tone of the age and the frivolous aspect of femininity. We see in this poem the elegance and the emptiness, the meanness and the vanity, the jealousies, treacheries and intrigues of the social life of the aristocracy of the 18th century in its real form. The poem shows that how we become acquainted with the idleness, late rising and fondness for domestic pets of the aristocratic ladies of the time. Belinda wakes up at the hour of 12 and then falls asleep again. We also become acquainted in the very beginning of the poem with the superficiality of the ladies who loved gilded chariots and affected a love of the game of amber. Their ambition to marry peers and dukes or men holding other high titles is indicated too in the opening canto. The poem brings out the coquetry, the art, the artifice, and the varying vanities of the ladies of the time. These ladies learned early in their life how to roll their eyes and to blush in an intriguing manner. Their hearts were like toy shops which moved from one gallery to another. Interrelation of individual personality and national interest. Literature has a national as well as a personal character and interest. Literature can be observed from age to age and its various transformations. It is only as account of work done by a number of separate writers, but it is also an account of great body of literature, which in its totality is to be regarded as the production of the genuine of the people. Everything that for good or evil has entered into the making of our nation's life have also entered into the texture of its literature. Ordinary English history is English nation's biography and its literature is its autobiography. As we survey the history of English literature, through all its transformations, we are brought into direct and living contact with the motive forces of the inner life of each successive generation and learn at first hand how it looks at life and what it thought about it. What were the things in which it was most interested and by which it was most willing to be amused, by what passion it was most deeply stirred, by what standards of conduct and of taste it was governed, and what types of character it deemed most worthy of its admiration. Thus, literature is the revelation of the progressive mind as well as the spirit of the people. Reflection theory. Traditionally, the central perspective for sociologists studying literature has been the use of literature as information about society. To a much lesser degree, traditional work has focused on the effect of literature in shaping and creating social action. The former approach, the idea that literature can be read as information about social behavior and values, is generally referred to as reflection theory. Literary texts have been variously described as reflecting the economics, family relationships, climate and landscapes, attitudes, morals, races, social classes, political events, wars, and religion of the society that produced the text. Most people are familiar with an at least implicit reflection perspective from journalistic social commentary. Unfortunately, reflection is a metaphor, not a theory. The basic idea behind reflection that the social context of a cultural work affects the cultural work is obvious and fundamental to a sociological study of literature. But the metaphor of reflection is misleading. Reflection assumes a simple mimetic theory of literature in which literary works transparently and unproblematically document the social world for the reader. In fact, however, literature is a construct of language. Its experience is symbolic and mediating rather than direct. Convincing research arguing for literary evidence of social patterns now requires a careful specification of how and why certain social patterns are incorporated in literature while others are not. In conclusion, we can say literature is only one of the many channels in which the energy of an age discharges itself in its political movements. Most people are familiar with an at least implicit reflection perspective from journalistic social commentary. Unfortunately, reflection is a metaphor, not a theory. The basic idea behind reflection that the social context of a cultural work affects the cultural work is obvious and fundamental to a sociological study of literature. But the metaphor of reflection is misleading. Reflection assumes a simple nomadic theory of literature in which literary works transparently and unproblematically document the social world for the reader. In fact, however, literature is a construct of language. Its experience is symbolic and mediating rather than direct. Convincing research arguing for literary evidence of social patterns now requires a careful specification of how and why certain social patterns are incorporated in literature while others are not. In its conclusion, literature is only one of the many channels in which the energy of an age discharges itself in its political movements, religious thought, philosophical speculation, art. We have the same energy overflowing into other forms of expression. The study of English literature, for example, will thus take us out into the wide field of English history, by which we mean the history of English politics and society, manners and customs, culture and learning, and philosophy and religion. However, diverse the characteristics which make up the sum total of the life of an epoch. These, like the qualities which combine in an individual, are not as ten it's merely juxtaposed. They are interrelated and interdependent. Our aim must therefore be to correlate the literature of any age to all the other important aspects of the national activity of the time. Thus, it is very essential to know the characteristics of the age in which the writer lives. A writer is not an isolated fact, but the product of the age in which he lived and works. His picture of life is provided with the influence of his age. Thus, literature is simply a mirror of life. a reproduction, and obviously a social document. Language for education. Role of language in education. Relationship between language and education. Impact of language on education. Medium of instruction. Multilingualism as a source. Language for education. Most of us will agree that education has become an important aspect of today's society, without which the prosperous life of an individual is impossible. We are not only eager to receive education, but also serious enough to let others take it. If we see education analytically, it is a purposeful, mindful, psychological, sociological, scientific and philosophical process which brings about the development of the individual to the fullest and also the development of society in such a way that both enjoy maximum satisfaction and prosperity. In short, education is the development of individual according to the needs and demands of the society, of which the individual is an integral part. Meaning and concept. There is a great controversy in regard to the meaning and definition of the term education. Divergent Socrates and Plato up to present day. According to Socrates, education means bringing out of the idea of universal validity which are latent in the mind of every man. Froebel defines thus the term education. Education is a process by which child makes its internal external. According to Dewey, education is the development of all those capabilities in the individual which will enable him to control his environment and fulfillment his possibilities. T. Dumont defined education as a process of development. From intensive to maturity, the process by which he adopts himself gradually in various ways of his physical, social and spiritual environment. According to Mahatma Gandhi, by education I mean an all-round drawing out of the best in child and man body, mind and soul. According to Butler, education is a gradual adjustment of the conditional to the spiritual possessions of the race. Thus we see, if it is not completely impossible, it is further very difficult to assess the real value of the term education. Education has such a broad sense that the definition of 2 or 3 lines, although various educators of different ages have tried to define the term, yet their definitions are only partly true and touch only the cost of the whole question. The word education has a very wide connotation and it is very difficult to give its precise definition. A biologist, a priest, a psychologist, a statesman, a teacher, a merchant, a shopkeeper, and even an artisan, all of them are supposed to be having intelligence that will be widely different definitions. Collingwood, a great philosopher of his time, evaluation the word education said that collecting definitions is not philosophy, but a parlor game. In other words, we may say that Education has such a wide scope that any definition of any philosopher or thinker will never bring out the intrinsic sense of the term education. But even then, we have to analyze various viewpoints of various thinkers. Freud has said that education is a process through which child makes its internal external. Etymological viewpoint, the word education is derived from Latin word educatum. The alphabet E indicates from internal and duca stands for to lead. This analysis of the word education clarifies the fact that a child possesses the internal capabilities, but these capacities are made external through the weapon of education. In other words, we may say that education awakens those innate powers which are possessed in a child. This process of awakening is nothing but education. To justify the fact, it will be better to quote a famous writer, Varro here. He says, educate, obstetrics, educate, nutrix, institute, pedagogus, docet, magister. It means the midwife brings forth, the nurse brings up, the tutor trains, and the master teaches. In its criticism, the above quoted statements are from noble minds, but if we see closely, we find that all the definitions are only partly true and touch the surface only. Education is not only a lantern or a torch which enlightens only the internal capacities of a child, but it has certain originality also. It cultivates certain values in life. Certain moral force is generated through education. A child learns a lot of facts and figures from his parents and environments. This knowledge is quite new to him and is unique in nature. Thus, the etymological viewpoint does not explain this originality, which is the heart of educational process. From the point of view of Indian thinkers, ancient Indian thinkers took an idealistic or spiritual view of education. Modern Indian thinkers have regarded education more from the practical point of view than the idealistic one. Ancient thinkers in Rig Veda, education has been understood as something which makes a man self-reliant and selfless. In Upanishads, education has been understood as something the end product of which is salvation. According to Yajna Valkya, education is that which makes a man of good character and useful to the world. According to Kautilya, the great Indian statesman and lawgiver, education means training for the country and love for the nation. Shankaracharya regards education as the realization of the self. Modern thinkers, according to Swami Dyanand, education is a means for character formation and righteous living. According to Mahatma Gandhi, by education I mean an all-round drawing out of the best in child and man, body and mind and spirit. According to Gurudev Tagore, harmony with all existence and thus enables the mind to find the ultimate truth which gives us the wealth of inner light and love and gives significance to life. According to Ayurveda, education means helping the growing soul to grow out, that is, in itself. According to Swami Vivekananda, education already existing in man. By education, we mean drawing out the divine potential already existing in man. Meaning of education from the point of view of Western thinkers. Western interpretation of the term education has been changing from time to time. But fact remains that modern concept of education owes much to Western thinkers. Thinkers of the past, according to Plato, education is the capacity to feel pleasure and pain at the right moment. It develops in the body and in the soul of the pupil all the beauty and all the perfection which he is capable of. According to Aristotle, education is the creation of a sound mind in a sound body. It develops man's faculty, especially his mind, so that he may be able to enjoy the contemplation of supreme truth, goodness and beauty of which perfect happiness essentially consists. According to Comenius, all who are Bora as human beings need education because they are destined to be real men, not wild beasts, dull animals and clumps of wood. Modern thinkers, according to Pestalozzi, education is the natural, harmonious and progressive development of man's innate powers. According to Froebel, education is unfoldment of what is already capacities in the individual which will enable him to control his environment. Education is a process of development from infancy to maturity, the process by which he adopts himself gradually in various ways of his physical and spiritual environment. According to T. Binan, education is the complete development of the individuality of the child so that he can make an original contribution to human life according to the best of his capacity. Thompson defines education as the influence of the environment on the individual with a view to producing a permanent or permanent change in his habits, behavior, thought, and of attitude. A process in which one personality acts upon another in order to modify the development of that other by the communication and manipulation of knowledge. Narrower meaning of education. In the narrow sense, education means school education in which the child is taught predetermined experiences in a controlled environment. This type of education is for a certain period and curriculum is decided by adults and aged persons. In the narrow sense of education, the place of teacher is main and child is subsidiary. According to this sense, when school life is the education period, explaining the narrower sense and importance of education. G.H. Thompson writes, education is a kind of environment which puts down its effect to bring the changes permanently in the habits, behavior, meditation and view of man. The form of education in narrower meaning has been criticized by many of the educationists. According to them, child remains deprived of practical knowledge because of bookish education. Child is forced to learn the bookish knowledge like a parrot, like a parrot, but these children find themselves unable and incapable in solving the problems of their future life. This type of education does not contribute a strong sense of confidence in them. Wider meaning of education in the broad sense of the term, education is the process of development and growth of a person from infancy to maturity. It is a process by which an individual learns how to adapt himself to physical, social and spiritual environment gradually and in various ways. It is a process which goes to continuously all through one's life. It is a lifelong process. It is a process of organizing and recognizing experiences. From the point of view of the education, it is a process specially designed at influencing the development and growth of a person. According to none, a living organism possesses freedom of will, the right of self-determination and an autonomous self. But the difference of man from other animals lies in the fact that man is a rational animal, endowed with infinite possibilities besides gross, innate, organic needs. Other mental and social needs are there. He has other equipments, inherited tendencies, abilities, some of which are acquired in the process of his life. Tendencies, interests, aptitudes, and the like. Endowed with these, man has built up civilization and culture. Analytical meaning of education. The word education has several meanings and hence it is explained vividly here. The word education has been analyzed to find out its certain meaning and to explain moreover the meaning of education. Education as a development of born powers of students, owing to progress made in the field of education, psychology. Psychologists state that stuffing or diluting the education in the minds of students is not education. Education means complete or entire development of born powers of students. Educationist tradition also writes stressing the same form of education. Education is the process by which internal powers of man are developed. Education as new information, according to some academicians, accumulation and execution of new information is education. They call the information knowledge. They call the informations knowledge. Though information are helpful in education process, but these can't take place of education. Education as a dynamic process. Education is a dynamic process which leads both man and society to the path of progress. Dynamicity means that with the social changes, there are changes in the process, which is not an inert process. Education as a limited knowledge of the school campus. Some scholars consider the education confined to range of school, but this type of thoughts regarding education is unfair. Education is a lifelong process which is not restricted by age or place. Extensive meaning of education. From extensive view, education means all those experiences which the child learns in vivid circumstances. According to this meaning, education is the process that goes on for whole life. The trend with a growing age that youth gain several experiences, establishing the adjustment with social and spiritual environment. The experiences achieved in this way is education. The process of learning and teaching goes on continuously. In extensive meaning, according to education, every person is both a teacher and a learner. There is no controlled environment in this process. Explaining the extensive meaning of education, well-known educationist T. Raymond says, education is the process of development which goes on continuously from childhood to old age and in which the man adjusts himself to the spiritual environment. Thus, on the basis of acquired experience to develop the capacity of adjustment with different environments is education. According to extensive meaning of education, education is a lifelong process. To support this statement, educationist Dumil says, in the extensive meaning, all those effects are included which affect the man from child to death. Mekanji also confirms the view in the extensive meaning. Education is a process which goes on for whole life and every. The statements of educationists evidently explain that education is not only confined to home or school, but it has a vast scope. Every place and circumstance, who teaches is teacher, and all those whom he teaches are students. With this view, every man is a teacher and a learner, and the whole life is education period. Locke's statement also supports this view. Life is education, and education is life. This is all about education. The rest of the things we will discuss tomorrow. Thank you.